Ronald Speirs had already made it across Foy. He had reached Item Company, delivered the message, and was finally surrounded by friendly American soldiers. Behind him, Easy Company was still advancing under German fire. Between them, German troops still held parts of the village. Speirs had already survived that crossing once. Then he turned around and ran back through the German lines. One rifleman in the right window could have killed him. One machine gun burst could have stopped him in the street. But Easy Company had just lost its commander, and Speirs was the officer Winters had sent to save the attack. If he remained with Item Company, Easy would be fighting without him. So he crossed the enemy-held village a second time. That is the moment Band of Brothers made famous. But the series barely explains why the run was necessary. How had one of America's most experienced airborne companies become so disorganized that its new commander had to leave his own men, cross German-held ground, and then run back through the same fire? The answer begins minutes earlier when Easy Company stepped out of the woods and into the open snow. On the morning of January 13, 1945, Easy Company was ordered to attack the Belgian village of Foy. The men had watched the village for weeks from their frozen positions near the Bois Jacques. They knew the church tower. They knew the road entering the village. They knew German soldiers were waiting somewhere among the houses. But between Easy Company and the first buildings was a wide field covered in snow. There was almost nowhere to hide. Once the paratroopers left the trees, every dark uniform would stand out against the white ground. German machine guns could sweep the field. Mortar observers inside Foy could watch the Americans move. Riflemen could fire from windows the paratroopers could barely see. Easy had only one real defense: keep moving. Reach the buildings before the Germans could pin the company down in the open. But Easy was not attacking alone. Item Company was advancing toward Foy from another direction. The two companies needed to know where the other was moving. If they remained connected, they could pressure the German defenders from multiple sides. If they lost contact, the village could become a maze of American units, German positions, and friendly soldiers firing toward one another without knowing who was on the opposite side. The attack depended on three things: speed, communication, and command. Easy Company began losing all three almost immediately. At approximately 9 in the morning, the paratroopers stepped out of the tree line. German fire came from the village. Men dropped into the snow. Some searched for depressions in the frozen ground. Others tried to locate machine guns hidden among the houses. Every second spent in the open made the company easier to target. Easy's commander was First Lieutenant Norman Dyke. In Of Band of Brothers, Dyke is portrayed as an officer who disappears when his men need him and then becomes almost completely paralyzed during the attack on Foy. Several veterans remembered his performance that day in similarly harsh terms. Carwood Lichten later said that Dyke fell apart. But the historical picture is more complicated than the television version. Dyke had received decorations for actions elsewhere in the war. At least one later account maintained that he was wounded during the attack. Whether he failed because of injury, confusion, fear, poor preparation, or some combination of those factors remains disputed. But whatever happened inside Dyke, the result on the battlefield was unmistakable. He ordered 1st Platoon to move around one side of Foy. Then contact with those men began to break down. The rest of Easy Company stopped short of the village. The paratroopers were too far from the trees to withdraw safely, but they were not close enough to use the buildings as cover. They were trapped in the most dangerous place possible. German fire continued coming from Foy. The men needed new orders. Instead, precious seconds passed. Then more. The longer Easy remained still, the more time German observers had to locate the Americans and adjust their fire. A company that had survived Normandy, the Netherlands, and the siege of Bastogne was now lying exposed in an open field because its attack had lost direction. From the battalion command position, Captain Richard Winters could see the disaster developing. Easy Company had once been his company. He knew many of the men pinned in the snow. His first reaction was to move forward and take control himself. But Winters was now serving at battalion level. His responsibility extended beyond Easy Company. Major Robert Strayer stopped him from personally entering the fight. Winters needed another officer. Immediately, he turned around. The first one he saw was Ronald Speirs. There was no conference, no time to compare candidates, no dramatic search for the most fearless officer in the regiment. Speirs simply happened to be there when Easy Company needed someone. Winters gave him a direct order: relieve Dyke, take command of Easy Company, and continue the attack. Speirs moved forward. That detail matters. He was not initially sent to run through Foy. He was not ordered to perform some legendary act. He was sent to solve a simple but deadly problem. A company had stopped moving, its men were exposed, and someone had to make decisions before German fire destroyed them in the snow. Speirs reached Dyke and relieved him. Then he began issuing orders. They were short, specific, immediate. Men who had been waiting in the field began moving again. Separated groups were redirected. The advance restarted toward the first buildings of Foy. Speirs had solved the first crisis. But as Easy Company began moving, he discovered that the attack was already divided into two disconnected battles. If you enjoy discovering the history that famous war movies and television series leave unexplained, subscribe to Forgotten War Stories. Because Speirs' next decision was not about proving how fearless he was. It was about preventing two American companies from fighting through the same village without knowing where the other one was. Before Foy, the men of Easy Company already knew Ronald Speirs' name. Most did not know him personally. They knew the stories. There were rumors that Speirs had shot German prisoners. Another story claimed that he had killed an American sergeant. Some incidents associated with him were supported by witnesses. Others changed depending on who was telling them. Speirs rarely tried to correct the stories. The uncertainty made them stronger. To some soldiers, he seemed brutally efficient. To others, he seemed dangerous. But rumors could not move Easy Company across the field. Fear could make men obey an order. It could not replace clear leadership. Speirs had combat experience. He had fought from Normandy through the Netherlands. He had been wounded and returned to duty. More important, he understood what Easy needed at Foy. The men had not suddenly lost their courage. They had lost coordination. Once Speirs took over, the company began functioning again. But restarting Easy advance exposed a second problem. Item Company was still somewhere on the other side of the village, and Speirs did not know exactly where. On a map, the attack appeared straightforward. Easy Company would advance from one direction. Item Company would approach from another. The two units would keep contact as they entered Foy and compress the German defenders between them. Inside the village, the situation was far more dangerous. Buildings blocked visibility. Smoke moved through the streets. Gunfire echoed between stone walls, making it difficult to tell which direction it came from. German troops still occupied houses and defensive positions between the advancing American units. Easy's earlier flanking movement had already separated part of the company. Reliable radio communication was unavailable where Speirs needed it most. He could not simply call Item Company and ask for its position. That created two immediate threats. The first came from the Germans. If a gap remained between Easy and Item, German soldiers could move through it, attack one company's flank, or escape deeper into Foy. The second threat came from the Americans themselves. Easy and Item were entering the same village from different directions. Without knowing where the other company had reached, American soldiers could fire toward a building while friendly troops approached it from the opposite side. The companies needed direct contact. Speirs needed to know Item's position, and Item needed to know where Easy was moving. Waiting for communication to improve would cost time. Sending a runner around the contested section of Foy could take too long. Every delay gave the Germans more time to organize against Easy's renewed advance. Speirs saw the fastest solution. It was also the most dangerous. He would cross the uncleared section of Foy himself. The exact route Speirs followed cannot be reconstructed down to every doorway, wall, and road. The men who witnessed the event saw it from different positions. The television series also compresses the geography so the action can be understood clearly on screen. But the central event is well supported. Speirs left Easy Company and ran through ground still exposed to German troops. He moved across a contested section of the village while the battle continued around him. American soldiers had not secured every building between Easy and Item. German troops still controlled positions inside Foy. Speirs was not running safely behind the American line. He was crossing the uncertain ground separating two advancing companies. Speed may have protected him. Confusion may have helped. A lone American officer running across Foy did not fit the pattern German soldiers expected to see. Some may not have understood what was happening until he had already passed. Some fired and missed. Others may never have had a clear view through the smoke, buildings, and movement. But nothing made the crossing safe. Speirs was not immune to bullets. One German rifleman in the correct window could have killed him. One machine gun burst across the street could have ended the mission. He kept running, past buildings that had not been cleared, across roads still covered by enemy fire, through the gap between the two American companies, until he reached Item Company. There, Speirs finally established the contact Easy had been missing. He explained where his men were advancing. He learned how far Item Company had reached. The two units could now coordinate their movement with a better understanding of where friendly troops were located. The first run had worked. The communication problem had been reduced. Speirs had reached American soldiers. He had survived the enemy-held village. The most dangerous part of the mission appeared to be over. But solving the first problem created another. Easy Company's new commander was now standing on the wrong side of Foy. For the first time since beginning the run, Speirs was surrounded by friendly troops. He could have remained there. He had delivered the information. He had completed the immediate task. He could have taken cover with Item Company and waited for the American lines to move forward. He could have asked another soldier to carry information back once the route became safer. Nobody needed to order Speirs to cross Foy again. But Winters had not sent him forward to become a messenger. Winters had sent him to command Easy Company, and Easy was still behind him. Its men were still advancing under German fire. Its platoons were still recovering from the earlier breakdown. German soldiers were still resisting from inside the village. The company had only just begun moving again. Then, its new commander disappeared in the Foy. The first crossing had connected Easy with Item, but it had separated Speirs from the men he had been ordered to lead. He now had a choice: remain with friendly troops on the safer side of the village, or return to the same dangerous ground to finish the job Winters had given him. Speirs turned around. The first crossing may have benefited from surprise. The second could not. Any German soldier who had noticed Speirs now understood that an American officer was moving through the village. The buildings had not been cleared. The roads had not become safe. The enemy had not disappeared simply because Speirs had reached the other side. He would have to cross the same contested ground again. And this time, he would be running back toward Easy Company. Speirs left Item's position. Then he ran, back through the streets, back past German-held buildings, back across the gap between the American units. Men from Easy watched him disappear into the contested area. They had seen him run toward Item Company. Now they saw him returning through the same enemy fire. Until that morning, Easy Company's knowledge of Ronald Speirs had come largely from stories. They had heard what he might have done. They had heard what he was supposedly capable of. At Foy, they no longer needed the rumors. They watched him cross the village twice. The first run demonstrated courage. The second revealed responsibility. Speirs was not returning because the first crossing had failed. He returned because it had succeeded. Easy and Item now had contact. The immediate danger of two disconnected American advances had been reduced, but Foy was still contested. German troops were still fighting. Easy Company still needed a commander. Speirs could not direct its platoons from Item Company's position. He could not respond to German resistance from the other side of the village. He could not finish the attack while standing with another unit. The mission was not simply to reach Item Company. The mission was to take Foy, and the men Winters had placed under Speirs' command were waiting behind him. That is what makes the second crossing more important than the first. Running toward danger once can be reckless. Running through it, completing a specific task, and then returning because the larger mission remains unfinished is something else. The first run connected two American companies. The second returned Speirs to the men he was now responsible for leading. When Speirs reached Easy Company again, he resumed command. The attack did not suddenly become easy. German soldiers continued firing from inside Foy. American troops still had to enter streets covered by enemy weapons. They still had to clear buildings and locate positions hidden among the houses. Machine guns, rifles, and snipers remained dangerous. Easy Company's soldiers had to fight for the village themselves. Item Company continued advancing from its direction. Other elements of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment contributed to the larger operation. Speirs did not capture Foy alone. What he restored was command. He replaced hesitation with decisions. He moved men out of the exposed field. He reconnected Easy Company with another American unit. Then he returned to direct the attack. The battle became a series of problems that could be solved instead of a company waiting in the snow for German fire to find it. Easy pushed deeper into the village. American soldiers cleared German positions house by house. The two companies advanced with a better understanding of where the other was moving. By the end of the battle, Foy was in American hands. The victory did not end the Battle of the Bulge. It did not destroy the German army in the Ardennes, but it helped the 556 continue pushing north beyond the ground the 101st Airborne had defended around Bastogne. For Ronald Speirs, the consequences were even more immediate. He remained in command of Easy Company through the final months of the war. Band of Brothers captures the central sequence accurately. Easy Company's attack stalled. Winters sent Speirs forward to replace Dyke. Speirs restored the advance. He crossed the contested village to establish contact with Item Company. Then he returned. The series also captures what the run did to Speirs' reputation. Before Foy, he was an outsider surrounded by frightening stories. After Foy, he was Easy Company's commander. But television simplifies the history. The episode presents Norman Dyke almost entirely as a cowardly and incompetent officer. The criticism from Easy Company veterans was real. The attack had clearly stopped under his command. But evidence that Dyke may have been wounded, together with his decorated service elsewhere, makes the real man more complicated than the character shown on screen. The series also makes Speirs' run feel almost supernatural. German soldiers appear unable to react because they cannot believe what they are seeing. The more likely explanation is still extraordinary. Speirs survived through speed, confusion, broken visibility, surprise, and luck. None of those factors diminishes the action. They make the danger more real. Speirs was not protected by a legend. Every bullet simply missed. But the largest thing the series leaves unexplained is the purpose of the second crossing. Without the communication problem, the run can look like a spontaneous demonstration of fearlessness. It was not. Speirs crossed Foy because Easy and Item needed direct contact. He ran back because Easy Company still needed its commander. The courage was extraordinary, but it existed in service of a clear military objective. For decades, discussions about Ronald Speirs have focused on the darkest rumors surrounding him. Did he kill German prisoners? Did he shoot an American sergeant? Was he truly as dangerous as the series suggests? Some parts of the stories are supported. Others remain disputed. But the run through Foy is different. It was witnessed by the soldiers around him. It does not require a rumor to make Speirs fascinating. When Easy Company's attack stopped, Speirs moved forward. When the company needed direction, he took command. When two American units could not communicate, he crossed the contested village himself. And when he reached friendly troops on the other side, he did not remain there. He returned to Easy, not because the first run had failed, not because Winters ordered him to perform the crossing again, but because the responsibility Winters had given him was still waiting on the other side. Before Foy, Speirs' reputation was built from stories other soldiers told about him. After Foy, the men of Easy Company had their own. Ronald Speirs did not become a legend simply because he ran through German-held Foy. The first run had a clear purpose. It connected Easy Company with another American unit and helped prevent a confused attack from becoming a disaster. But once Speirs reached the other side, the decision changed. He had already crossed the danger. He had already delivered the information. He was finally surrounded by friendly soldiers. He could have remained there. Instead, he looked back toward Easy Company, toward the men still fighting under German fire, toward the responsibility Winters had just placed in his hands. Then Speirs turned around and ran back. The first run delivered the message. The second returned the commander. And that is why the most important moment in the famous Band of Brothers scene is not Ronald Speirs disappearing into German-held Foy. It is the moment Easy Company realizes that he is coming back. If you want more forgotten war stories that sound impossible but really happened, subscribe and follow us.